Hello and welcome to this presentation on enhancing the development in Mexico. Today we'll be discussing three target interventions that could significantly improve the country's development performance, focusing specifically on infrastructure, on education, and gender equity. So, to give you some brief context about Mexico, the country is classified as a democracy, but recent political development have raised important questions. So the country has been governed by the left wing Morena party since 2018, so 7 years ago approximately, and under President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. So following his tenure, Claudia Sheinbaum won in 2024 the elections, and in order to continue, this Morena's leadership. So while elections remain free and fair, the overwhelming, dominance has led many political analysts to describe Morena as perhaps as a hegemonic party, a term that we are pretty familiarized throughout this course, and a term that basically is when one party dominates the political space and public discourse. So this is the second time that happens. In 1900, it was when PRI, Partido Revolucionario Institucional, came into power, and basically they dominated for around 70 years. So even with democratic institution, the persistence of poverty, inequality, particularly in the southern states like Oaxaca, Chiapas, and Tabasco, underscores this urgent need for comprehensive development strategies. And to address, I propose three interventions. The first one is infrastructure development in tourist regions, educational reforms to improve, literacy and economic participation. Also, that will impact, the labor force, markets, and the private sector. And last but not least, gender equity through community-based initiatives. So these interventions are grounded in established development theories supported by the course, and of course supported by global institutions like the World Bank and United Nations programs that basically cooperate with the governments and private sector to implement these initiatives that of course I would love to see implemented. So the first one is infrastructure in poorest regions. So according to the World Bank, over 60% of people in Oaxaca live in poverty, and many reside in isolated rural areas with inadequate access to road, clean water, or reliable electricity. So here, modernization theory is particularly relevant because it suggests that economic growth occurs as society adopts modern infrastructure and technologies. Okay, so in this context, improving physical infrastructure is essential for stimulating local economies and integrating these regions into national markets, not only in the rural part, but also connected to the rural part to the urban part of the state, and also to other neighboring states. So a major initiative underway is what I'm thinking about is an interoceanic corridor of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec that basically connects the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans via revitalized rail system and highway networks across Oaxaca and Veracruz. If fully executed, this project could bring, of course, jobs, improve logistics, and reduce travel time within these two cities, and potentially could transform the economic landscape of the southern eastern part of Mexico. But infrastructure can rely on the public sector alone. This is where public-private partnership, or well known as PPPs, that are also well implemented by development institutions, come into play. Because Mexico has the framework in order to implement those kind of cooperations. So by combining the government funding with private investment expertise, Mexico can develop a resilient infrastructure faster and more sustainably. This is also aligned with institutionalist theory, which highlights the roles of institutions in facilitating growth and cooperation between sectors. So the main impact that we could have is basically improved roads and logistics that could reduce transport costs, enable access to education and health services because you will be much more connected, and of course create jobs directly and indirectly way before you start the project and after the project, supporting local business and of course increasing regional GDPs in this state that are basically lagging behind other like Monterrey or Guadalajara or Mexico. So in terms of the second intervention that I'm proposing is educational literacy. So next, so according to the World Bank, Oaxaca has an illiteracy rate of over 16%, more than double the national average of 7%, you know. So in contrast, you know, countries like Germany, Canada, or other European countries, literacy rate are above 95%, which is way above in Mexico. This is where human capital theory um, becomes super relevant because the theory introduced by economists like Gary Becker emphasized that investing in education improves worker productivity and long-term economic growth. A strong education system also supports Amartya Sen's capability approach, which focuses on expanding people's freedoms and abilities to live their value. Without literacy, people are deprived of both, you know, the economic and personal agency. So to bridge this gap, I propose establishing community learning centers in rural areas, either, you know, with the cooperation of NGOs or more traditional organizations, expanding digital literacy programs using mobile technologies because all of these, even though these states suffer from poverty, they have access to to this kind of technologies such as a mobile phone or a computer or a tablet. And last but not least, partnering with groups like the Oaxaca Community Foundation and international NGOs to scale resources and trainings in terms of education. And the impact in this regard will be higher literacy rates will translate into increased employment in the region because you already have the infrastructure and now you are investing in the education. So later you will have enhanced participation in local governance and civil society. And an additional one would be a more innovative and resilient labor force because now you have all the skills developed in order to go to the workforce. So to sum up, you know, this improved education will build an educated consumer base and tax base that will not only benefit individuals but also the public side, you know, fueling the formal economy and enabling this better public service. And lastly, we have the gender component, which is the gender equity through community-based organization, which is something that I'm trying to develop and is really something that it's attached to my heart and also is something I have witnessed. So not only in rural but also in urban areas, okay? Female labor participation is way too low comparing to men participation, as low as 30%, 33% versus men that basically they participate around 50 or 60%, and with most women working informally. And all of this is information from the International Finance Corporation. And they also state that Mexican women earn nearly 10% less than men and are underrepresented in leadership roles. So here, feminist political economy, that I understand that is something that we didn't review during the course, but it's something that I wanted to draw from other knowledge that I have, and it's something that I would like to further develop later. But it's quite attached to the development theory that we have seen through all the 6 modules, and is, I could say, a separate theory that I truly believe it complements this one pretty well because it's the key of theoretical lens. So it argues that economic system must address power imbalances, specifically gender-based disparities, to achieve inclusive development. Inclusive for me is fundamental. And this theory intersects with intersectionality, a concept coined by Kimball Kershaw, which highlights how overlapping identities like gender and ethnicity compound inequality. So the main point that I'm trying to address here is basically supporting community-based organizations, CVOs, or perhaps also NGOs that are focused on these terms, that offer trainings, legal assistance, and financial literacy for women, which is something that we have already available some funding from either the development agency from the UK. Nowadays, the United States are not providing funding, but of course, we have all these initiatives from Japan, from Spain that are mainly focused on this gender equality lens. And also, an additional part could be promoting female entrepreneurship through access to microloans. Microloans are a really important boost at the bottom of the pyramid. And last but not least, the partnership with firms involved in Mexico to Equal, which is a project that is already being implemented by the International Finance Corporation, to implement corporate reforms around hiring, leadership, and pay equity between these international companies that operate in Mexico. So I want to bring this to the medium enterprise and a small enterprise. And if implemented correctly, we could go into the individual side. So it could be a ripple effect. And another impact that I have identified here is basically when women work and earn more, family welfare improves, leading to better outcomes in health and education, more inclusive work spaces, enhanced productivity and innovation, and a macro level, narrowing the gender gap could add billions to Mexico GDP annually, according to the IMF. So this is not only a theory that I have reviewed and tried to sum up in here, but it's something that is achievable, and of course is backed up by international development institutions. So to give you some conclusion, we have looked at three powerful interventions targeting infrastructure that for me it's essential: education and gender equity, that drive equitable development in Mexico's most disadvantaged areas. So infrastructure investment will connect marginalized communities to opportunity. Education reform will build the human capital needed for sustaining growth. And of course, gender equity will empower, half of the population to contribute fully to a society and an economy. And as development theorists like Amartya Sen have noted, true progress is not just about GDP, it's about expanding the freedom and capabilities of all citizens. So thank you very much, and I hope we can discuss further these three proposals that I have discussed in this video. Thank you very much.